If we tried to measure how many rebels exist among children and how many among adults, the contrast would probably be obvious. Children resist, question, refuse, protest, test boundaries, and instinctively reject what feels false or imposed. Adults, by contrast, often become calmer, more obedient, more cautious, and much more willing to accept rules simply because the rules exist. Of course, this can be explained in ordinary psychological language. People talk about teenage hormones, emotional immaturity, or the learned helplessness that develops with age. But perhaps there is another possibility. Perhaps youth is not only chaotic, but in some sense closer to the truth. Because the older people become, the more they often start to seek dogma. They want strict rules, fixed structures, reliable authorities, clear instructions, correct language, and approved ways to live. At a young age, however, all of this often feels like chains, not guidance, but imprisonment. What adults call order, youth often experiences as suffocation. This tension stands very close to one of the central ideas in Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Nietzsche did not simply criticize religion, morality, or tradition in a superficial way. He was trying to describe a deeper problem: how inherited systems of value can extinguish the inner vitality of the human being. When a person blindly submits to ready-made rules, they stop creating. They no longer search for truth directly. They no longer test life through experience. Instead, they obey, repeat, and conform. For Nietzsche, that is spiritual decline. This is why the figure of Zarathustra matters so much. A wise man withdraws into solitude, distances himself from the noise of ordinary society, and encounters deeper truths. But the story does not end there. He cannot remain alone forever. He returns to others, not because they are ready, but because truth, once found, demands expression. Naturally, he is not welcomed by everyone. People prefer comfort to transformation. They prefer familiar chains to dangerous freedom. And that is still true now. The really provocative part of Nietzsche's vision is not rebellion for its own sake. It is the idea that a truly new human being must learn to question everything. Not in a shallow, contrarian way, but in a deep, disciplined, existential way. Such a person does not simply switch from one dogma to another. They create values from within. They examine inherited morality, inherited religion, inherited social roles, inherited duties, and even inherited desires. They ask, which of these are truly mine, and which have only been placed upon me? That question changes everything, because the new human being, in Nietzsche's sense, is not someone who merely breaks rules. It is someone who no longer depends on shepherds. No external authority is needed to tell them what to think, what to desire, what to fear, or what to worship. They become internally sovereign. They build their own hierarchy of values, their own priorities, their own meaning. That is freedom, and it is far more difficult than obedience. This idea resonates with many older traditions, even if Nietzsche's conclusions differ from them. There is something similar in Plato's allegory of the cave. Most people live inside shadows, mistaking them for reality, while the one who leaves the cave sees something more real, and then returns with knowledge others do not want to hear. There is something similar in Buddhism, where awakening requires a break from illusion and habitual attachment. There is even something structurally similar in prophetic traditions, where solitude, revelation, and return to society form one pattern. But Nietzsche adds something uniquely radical. Truth is not enough. The awakened person must also become a creator. And this is where one of the most fascinating images in Thus Spoke Zarathustra appears: the child. Nietzsche describes transformations of the spirit, and the final stage is not the scholar, not the priest, not the obedient servant, and not even the heroic destroyer. It is the child. Why? Because the child represents new beginning. Innocence without naivety, creativity, play, spontaneity, and the sacred yes to life. The child is free enough to create values rather than merely inherit them. That image is extraordinarily powerful. It suggests that the highest stage of development is not becoming harder, colder, or more mechanical. It is becoming more alive, more direct, more creative, more honest. In a strange way, the end of philosophical awakening returns a person to something like the beginning, but transformed. Not childishness, but a second innocence. This is why unnecessary limits matter so much. Many people bind themselves with roles, obligations, fears, and systems that were never truly theirs. They mistake conformity for maturity. They call dependence wisdom. They call obedience morality,